Ethan Harper had worked tirelessly to afford his home in an upscale gated community. He took immense pride in his space, enjoying the tranquility that came with living among well-maintained lawns and polite neighbors, or so he thought. Lately, however, something strange had been happening. His Wi-Fi connection was painfully slow. At first, Ethan brushed it off, assuming too many devices were connected. But when the lag persisted, curiosity got the better of him. One evening, as he sipped coffee on his couch, Ethan decided to investigate. Logging into his router settings, he discovered an unfamiliar device leeching off his network. Annoyed but calm, Ethan immediately changed the password, unknowingly setting off a chain of events far more explosive than he could have imagined. The next morning, Ethan was enjoying his usual cup of coffee on the porch when HOA Karen Whitmore stormed onto his property without so much as a knock. She was a middle-aged woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair, designer sunglasses perched atop her head, and an air of superiority that screamed entitled. Her arms were crossed, and her glare could cut glass. "Did you change your Wi-Fi password?" she snapped, wasting no time on pleasantries. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. He barely knew this woman. She rarely spoke unless it involved enforcing petty homeowners association rules. But here she was, acting like he owed her an explanation. "Yeah," Ethan replied casually. "Why?" HOA, Karen's face turned crimson with fury. "Because my internet stopped working. I've been using that connection for months, and now I can't do anything." Ethan stared at her, incredulous. "You've been stealing my Wi-Fi?" She scoffed, as if the concept of theft didn't apply to her. "It's just the internet. You people always make such a big deal out of nothing. It's not like it costs you anything extra." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. "It's my Wi-Fi and I pay for it. I don't owe you access." That was the last straw for HOA Karen. Her expression twisted into one of pure rage. "Oh, I see what's going on," she sneered. "You don't belong in this neighborhood and now you're trying to play games with the people who actually do. I'm calling the police." Before Ethan could respond, HOA Karen whipped out her phone and dialed 911. He listened in disbelief as she fabricated a story on the spot, her voice dripping with fake panic. "There's a suspicious man in my neighborhood. He's hacking into people's homes. He's harassing me right now. I feel threatened." Ethan shook his head, watching as HOA Karen smirked at him. She thought she had power. She thought she could manipulate the system. What she didn't realize was that she had picked the wrong person to mess with. As Ethan waited for the inevitable arrival of the police, he refused to panic. Instead, he grew curious about how deep this rabbit hole went. Walking back inside, he sat at his desk and pulled up his router's connection history. What he found sent chills down his spine. At first glance, the activity seemed ordinary, basic browsing and streaming. But the deeper he dug, the darker it became. There were multiple visits to racist forums filled with hate speech, conspiracy theories, and calls for violence. Someone, likely HOA Karen, had spent hours posting venomous comments under anonymous usernames, targeting minorities, and even doxing individuals they disliked. But that wasn't all. Buried in the data were encrypted transactions linked to fraudulent activities. Whoever had been using his Wi-Fi was running online scams, selling stolen goods through shady marketplaces, and dabbling in identity theft. Worst of all, Ethan uncovered login attempts to illegal websites flagged for trafficking explicit material. His stomach churned. If the authorities dug into HOA Karen's browsing history, there was no telling what else they'd find. Quickly, Ethan saved everything onto a USB drive. HOA Karen had spent years believing she could get away with anything, hiding behind her privilege and weaponizing the police whenever it suited her. This time, though, she had made a grave mistake. The sound of sirens cut through the afternoon air as a patrol car pulled up to Ethan's driveway. 2 officers stepped out. Officer Jordan, a tall, composed black man, and Officer Miller, his shorter, stockier white partner. Both wore unreadable expressions as they approached. HOA Karen, still standing in Ethan's yard, sprang into action. Rushing toward them, she launched into a dramatic performance. "Officers, thank God you're here," she wailed, her voice trembling with feigned distress. "That man," she pointed at Ethan with a shaking hand, "he's been hacking into my devices. I think he's stealing personal information from the whole neighborhood. I don't feel safe." Officer Jordan narrowed his eyes. "Ma'am, slow down. What exactly happened?" Karen sucked in a shaky breath, putting on the performance of a lifetime. "I was sitting in my home, minding my own business, when my internet stopped working. I realized he must have hacked into my network. Then, when I confronted him, he got aggressive. He threatened me and refused to fix what he did. I knew I had to call you before he did something worse." Officer Miller glanced at Ethan, who stood calmly on his porch, arms crossed. He didn't look the least bit threatening. In fact, he looked almost bored. "Sir," Officer Jordan said, turning to Ethan, "what's your side of the story?" Ethan sighed and gestured toward HOA Karen. "This woman has been stealing my Wi-Fi for months. I changed my password this morning, and she showed up at my door demanding I give her access again. When I refused, she lost it and called you." Officer Miller let out a skeptical chuckle. "Wait, she called the police because you changed your own Wi-Fi password?" H.O. Karen's head snapped toward Miller, her face twisting in anger. "It's more than that. He's been hacking. He's probably doing illegal things online. You need to check his devices before it's too late." Officer Jordan took out his notepad. "All right, let's slow down here, Karen. You're saying you believe Ethan is hacking into your devices. Do you have any proof?" HOA Karen hesitated. "Well, no, but—" "And Ethan," Jordan continued, "you're saying she's been using your internet without permission?" Ethan nodded. "And I can prove it." The officers exchanged a glance. HOA Karen's story already had holes, and now the accused man was offering evidence. Jordan gestured toward the house. "All right, let's see what you've got." HOA Karen's confident smirk faltered for the first time. A flicker of unease crossed her face. She had assumed the police would be on her side, as they always were, but this time things weren't going according to plan. Ethan led the officers inside, heading straight to his computer. HOA Karen followed reluctantly, standing near the doorway like a caged animal. Her bravado had dimmed, but she still clung to the hope that the situation would swing back in her favor. Ethan plugged in his USB drive and pulled up the files he had saved. "I took a look at my router's history," he explained, clicking through the logs. "HOA Karen's been using my Wi-Fi for a while, and the sites she's been visiting, let's just say they're not exactly legal." The screen displayed damning evidence. Multiple transactions linked to fraudulent websites, messages from extremist forums filled with racist rhetoric, and worst of all, an attempt to access an illegal website flagged for child exploitation. Officer Miller let out a low whistle. "Jesus!" HOA Karen went pale. "That's not mine. He's making this up," she shrieked. Ethan didn't even turn to look at her. "HOA Karen, your IP address is right here. You were using my connection, remember? That means everything you did online was logged under my network." Officer Jordan folded his arms. "So, let me get this straight. You've been piggybacking off his Wi-Fi without permission, and now you're saying he somehow fabricated all this?" HOA. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It's a setup. He's some kind of hacker. I told you he was dangerous. Ethan finally turned to face her, a slow smirk forming. HOA Karen, you called the cops on me, thinking I'd get in trouble. All you did was bring them straight to your crimes. Officer Jordan exhaled through his nose, looking unimpressed. HOA Karen, I have to say, this isn't looking good for you. Officer Miller nodded in agreement. Yeah, and you know what? I think we need to dig a little deeper into what else you've been doing. HOA. Karen's panic exploded into outright desperation. No, this isn't fair. He's the criminal. She lunged at Ethan in a blind rage, her manicured nails aiming for his face. Before she could make contact, Officer Miller caught her wrist, twisting her arm behind her back. That's assault on top of everything else, he said coolly. HOA. Karen let out a strangled scream. No, you can't do this. I'm the victim. You don't understand. Officer Jordan took out his radio. Dispatch, we have a suspect in custody. Requesting backup for further investigation. OA. Karen's breath hitched. Suspect? No, wait, you don't understand. Officer Jordan didn't even look at her. He simply pulled out his handcuffs. HOA Karen, you're under arrest for assaulting an officer, cybercrime, and fraud. The moment those words left his mouth, HOA Karen lost what little sanity she had left. No, you can't do this. He's the real criminal. As the officers dragged her outside, her shrieks pierced the air. Neighbors had gathered, filming the scene or whispering among themselves. As HOA Karen wailed and twisted in their grip, Officer Jordan shut the patrol car door. Miller shook his head. Well, congratulations, HOA Karen. You just turned a bad situation into the worst day of your life. By the next morning, HOA Karen's name was plastered all over the news. The headline was brutal. Racist woman arrested after attacking black neighbor over Wi-Fi. Shocking cybercrime evidence found. The footage captured by nosy neighbors went viral. The way she screamed, the moment she spat at Officer Jordan, the arrest. It was all there in crystal clear detail, and the internet devoured it. HOA Karen was no longer just a neighborhood menace. She was now a national disgrace. The humiliation didn't stop there. Within days, the Homeowners Association held an emergency meeting. The decision was unanimous. HOA Karen was officially banned from the neighborhood. Her house, once her prized possession, became a financial noose around her neck. With mounting legal fees and no support from the community, foreclosure was inevitable. Meanwhile, Ethan finally got what he wanted. Peace. One evening, he sat on his porch, sipping coffee, his Wi-Fi stronger than ever. No more leeching, no more harassment, no more HOA Karen barging onto his property like she owned it. His phone buzzed with a message from a friend. Bro, you're a legend. She really thought she could get away with that. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. She thought she was untouchable, he muttered to himself. Guess she found out otherwise. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he took a deep breath, enjoying the quiet. Justice had been served, and for the first time in a long time it was a good day.